You're listening to Opinions and Beer.
And opinions and beer. Two guys and another guy. Will never happen again.
Hello, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Oh yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
We had to. You're very far away from us, so we had to hook up a Bluetooth speaker back here so we can hear you. So very
Nice.
Ingenuity right there at its finest.
What you gotta do, right?
Oh yeah. Well, you see, we're like 1 minute late. That's because I literally just scrambled everything to this table right here. So let me, woosah, lion face, lemon face. Let's go. We are Opinions and Beer. Welcome to the show, Matthew Taylor. How are you doing today?
Good. Glad to be here. How you doing?
Oh, you know, just another day, another dollar, another day in the life of the Opinions and Beer crew. Here, sitting around the table, about to crack open some Blue Owl Brewing Company Pastry Goose. It's a sour blueberry cobbler.
Enjoy some blueberry cobbler beer.
We are, we're not alcoholics. We're craft beer enthusiasts.
That makes it okay.
That's perfect.
But yeah, because I'm a cheap bastard and I have not paid for the Zoom Plus. Guess we're gonna do our beer review at the end of the episode. That way we give you all the time that you rightfully deserve.
Awesome.
So tell us, we have you on here now because you just released a documentary. Is that correct?
Yes, released a documentary on March 21st about the fall and rise of New York City. It's a 2-hour-long movie. It's quite extensive.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds interesting. I like to play on words, like instead of it being, the fall and rise,
Yeah.
Instead of rise and fall, it's the fall and rise.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on some of the online chatter that maybe you should have named it the fall, the rise, and the fall again?
Yeah, I've been getting that a lot. We ended on a high note, which is 2013. But I've gotten a lot of calls to do a sequel that's just called The Fall of New York After the Rise. So,
Rise my ass. There ain't nothing risen around here.
Yeah. I mean, it's the titles cause some problems because people automatically go, to the rise and fall. So they'll be like, it's the movie, The Rise and Fall, but it's actually The Fall and Rise. So, let everybody have their opinion.
Yeah, like all I know from New York is what I've seen on like TV and shit, being from, Texas. So it's like, it's like the fall and rise. Like, oh yeah, New York's getting better. And it's like, oh really? That's news to me. Like,
Now-
people still get stabbed a lot in the movies.
Are you from New York?
No, I'm originally from Washington, D.C., but I was in and out of the city from 86 to 95. So I actually saw the dirty, nasty New York. And I lived in New York City from 2014 to 2020, but I now live in Austin, Texas.
Well, what inspired you to reflect back on that and make a documentary on the subject?
It started in 2019. And Larry Moan, former president of the Manhattan Institute, came to my wife and I and said, hey, let's do a film that just kind of covers this era. A lot of people know it happened, but nobody knows how it happened. But then a couple months later, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the city kind of went into this spiral. So the project took on a totally different tone, as instead of looking back, it was looking forward, because like all cities across America are in kind of bad shape. Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, of course. And so we made it more of a guide to say, hey, look, if you want to get out of your perils and you're in an urban area, the worst city in America became the safest city in America. And this is how you do it.
Interesting.
What are some cliff notes you could share with us that we can look out for while watching the film?
Well, it covers 1966 to 2013, so it's a very long timeline. Covers 5 mayors extensively. We brush over one of them, Mayor Beam. We mentioned him, but he's really just the third term of Lindsay. And it really kind of gets into like the intricate details of how you basically make a lot of wrong decisions with really good intentions. We don't really disparage the earlier mayors as much, but we do say like they made a lot of poor decisions, and we're seeing a lot of those decisions made again in New York City, definitely, but across the country. And so, it's also kind of an interesting story because a lot of interesting and strange things happen. New York is a very, the pinnacle of American cities all over the world. People love it. They visit, so it is, it's a bazillion movies made about New York, TV shows. So it really kind of gets into a lot of those intricate details that people have never heard of. And by the end of it, look, New York City went from 2,200 murders in 1990 when I was a kid down to under 300 murders in a city of 8.5 million people. So that's just like unheard of. So it's really kind of a drastic change. It shows it, and you'll walk away like, you might hate parts of the movie, but you'll walk away fairly educated with like how it got there and how it got fixed.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of like stand-up comedians, and I've heard tons of comedians from even around the world say like that seedy part of New York's history, comedy became kind of New York's one of the cultural hubs for comedy in the world. And I think it was Bill Burr. It might have been a different comedian that I'm quoting, but Bill Burr, I think, is the one who said that like because of that like seedy, dark nature the city had, that's why comedy thrived there so much, as people were always looking for a laugh, especially like when you walk down the street and you could get stabbed.
Yeah, I mean, look, like it was the kind of place where I was there when I was a kid. I mean, it was just, you would have to put a piece of paper on your car that said no radio here, so they wouldn't smash your window. You'd come home and there'd be black soot under your nose from the pollution. So yeah, that environment actually, kind of created a lot of interesting things too, like the comedy scene, David Bowie, we used to play down in these like kind of like dingy holes, CBGBs. So I think when the city got better, a lot of people complain like, oh, it's lost some of its edge, it's lost some of its coolness. But on the other hand, you won't get murdered and you won't get raped and you won't get mugged. So there was a trade-off, for this city getting safer, and you did lose some of that edge, and again. Go on.
In preparing for this interview, I went and like he said about movies. My son's the biggest fan of Home Alone 2, and I went and watched the movie Big with Tom Hanks, and he goes to a peep show. Yeah. In that movie, and it's like New York was completely different, when that like you were saying, a million movies are filmed there, and like Big just kind of shows you a little bit of how different it was during that time period, where I think he was in Times Square. I think he was in like the place everybody knows of, and he went to a peep show.
Oh yeah, there's a great scene in Big, I think, where he first gets to the city and he's like in an apartment and there's just gunshots and screams. He's like holding his pillow and there's like shootings and like the thing about it is like that's what it was like. People, it's a joke because it was real. And yeah, I mean, Times Square used to be covered in nudie bars and prostitutes. And now it's, as we say in the movie, it's just like families from Ohio going to Red Lobster, I mean, so it turned around that much. I mean, as a kid, I remember like, we would never go to Times Square. It was just a cesspool, and there's a lot, like I said, the movies of the era, especially like Martin Scorsese movies, like After Hours, like people getting trapped in Soho and things like that. If you're 30 years old, like you've never seen that in New York. That's like it's like a myth. It's like a million years ago. The problem is it's coming back. And there's a lot of people in New York City who think it's totally safe and fine. And it's in fact not safe and fine right now. And it's getting worse.
Someone needs to call the Predator again to hunt the gangly.
Well, at least Martin Scorsese will have more material for a new movie.
What?
I said Martin Scorsese will have more material for a new movie.
I guess so.
Oh, tons of it.
Yeah.
And like as a comic book fan, New York is constantly like I think in preparation for this video, me and my buddy, he's not here, but me and a buddy of mine went down the list of like through DC and Marvel. If both universes were connected, New York would have like 20 30 plus heroes running
That's it?
around.
I thought it'd be
No,
more.
I thought it would be more too, but at the same time, it just goes to show like what he's talking about, like so much crime that when comic book authors were like, "Oh, where could my character be where there's the
and-
most crime?"
well,
New York.
New York.
Wasn't like Stanley was from New York, wasn't he? Like a lot of them chose New York because that was home to them, and like I really was under the impression that like 99.9% of every single Marvel character is from New York.
And of course,
all of them.
Gotham, very famously, is based off of 1920s New York with all of its deco art.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, yeah,
when
my
Marvel-
favorite Marvel guy is Spider-Man, and Spider-Man, of course, I mean, in the comics, he's lived in New York City for 50 years, but he's, the movies, the Sam Raimi movies, New York City is its own character.
Yes.
It's all these like crazy, weird characters just like commenting on Spider-Man. And, Raimi like nailed New York to a T. And he was kind of doing it the city had already turned into a better city. But like, you got the pizza guy and the construction worker. He stinks.
He stinks and I don't like him.
I stink. I don't like him.
He mess with one of us, he mess with all of us.
And then it comes down, that's also something too, like with the changing of New York. If I noticed, like when exactly like he was saying, Sam Raimi was painting New York in the light of like what it was, and there was a big. I think in 2 of Sam Raimi's movies, there are 2 big scenes where a bunch of random civilians come together to like help Spider-Man.
Absolutely, yeah. There's in the first movie, it's with the Green Goblin on the bridge when they're throwing things at him, and then the second movie is when he stops the subway train from crashing off. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, New Yorkers love New York, and New Yorkers, they're proud of their city, and they deserve to not suffer. Look, it's suffering enough living there. I mean, and I love it, but like, it's a punishing place. It's overpriced. It's dirty. It's expensive and weird. And it's great. But like, on top of that, you don't want to like, be mugged or murdered. And so New Yorkers deserve better, But yeah, I think it's true. I think also like for DC, I think Gotham represents the downtown area of the city and Midtown is Metropolis. So like it's kind of the contrast between the two parts of Manhattan. It is Midtown and downtown. So yeah, it's always an inspiration for comic book writers, for authors, TV shows. I mean, you would think that everybody lives there with all the media that's actually put together around New York City.
Like the whole genre of like noir, like all noir films and stuff. Like when it's not, Chicago is also very noir. But let's say when it's not in New York, then like, what are you doing? How noir are you if your shit's not in New York?
Yeah, it's a great backdrop for kind of any story. It's funny because as you got into the late 90s and the city got nicer, like it became Sex in the City. It was like girls going out and having fun and like, in contrast to like, again, like After Hours where a guy gets trapped in Midtown or in Soho and he can't get out and he's a weirdo and Cheech and Chong are running around stealing things, and people are like, that's just how it is,
Now, when you were filming this movie, was there anything that stood out to you that you took away that you didn't initially have about the city of New York?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One of the things that was interesting, we filmed during COVID, and a lot you couldn't really get permits at the time. The city was shut down, and so we just kind of filmed and all over the place. And what was interesting is that we could film anything and there was no police presence anywhere. And so it was actually a little concerning. We did all sorts of things. Like we put a guy in handcuffs and walked him up to one police plaza. No one ever asked anything. And it just shows that like the police presence in New York City is like very low right now. I mean, it's gotten a little bit more since the mayor put more police on the subway. But at the time, like, we told people, like, if you get in trouble, there's no one coming. No one's going to be there to help you. So don't get in trouble. So that was like one thing that was really fascinating about the making of the movie. Because usually you'd go in a subway with a camera and they'd throw you out. And like, nobody was around. So that was interesting. And of course, like the content itself, there's a lot of interesting things that we kind of put together. A lot of kind of details about how it was actually done. And that's the thing. And again, everybody knows it happened. Everybody knows that New York City got better, but the details of how it actually got better are largely just unknown. And that's why we made the movie, so we could really drill down into like, how was the welfare numbers fixed? How was the crime fixed? How was the education fixed? How did the buildings get cleaned up? How did the graffiti get cleaned up? How did the garbage get cleaned up? You know, and it all happened roughly most of it happened in the first 4 years of the Giuliani administration. And within 4 years, you had the murder rate drop from 2,200 to, I think, 700 murders a year, which is like insane. And you had the welfare numbers go from like 1.2 million people down to 425,000. So it was, these numbers are so insanely massive. You know, people may not like the mayor, but you can't really challenge the results.
Well, the whole concept of, you know, running a city so massive with so many people, like I was just thinking about like just the whole like running and managing that education system is like, that's mind-boggling to me. That like I can't even like fathom having to do that, you know. And
something about like the way that you titled it with the fall and rise of New York, and people are saying like, oh, it should be the fall again. Getting ready for this video, I was looking at New York has had a lot of up and down periods throughout its entire existence.
Yeah.
One of my dad's favorite movies of all time, Gangs of New York, it shows a pretty bad and seedy period of the city's history too. Yeah. So you know, New York's had tons of, you know, it's good that people are out there like with the, like, you know, writing down these things and filming them and putting in historical record, because film is a way that things become slightly immortalized.
Yeah, I mean, that like
absolutely
a lot of people that aren't even history buffs know about the gangs in New York and the 5 points and all that, just because it's in a movie forever now. And
yeah, I mean, it's a great backdrop to tell the stories. I mean, I love Gangs in New York. It's an amazing film, you know. And I would say that like in the history of New York, it's been more down than up. And so I think really the last 30 years is kind of an anomaly. Like the fact that you could take a train at 4 a.m. and deep into Brooklyn, you know, that just was not really a thing for over 100 years. I mean, it was always kind of a place where you came off the boat and then you maybe died, you know. It was,
oh, that should be funny.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those, it was a rough city, you know, it was a rough place. And, you know, it's been a utopia for the last 30 years. It's a utopia because, you know, the people in this movie I made said, we're done with having people get murdered and raped and all this kind of stuff. And they put their foot down and they made it better. So, yeah, it's one of those things where we say, look, if you're not careful, you'll lose it and it won't come back for a really long time. And right now, New York City is kind of losing it.
Now, with the rise of New York, was this like you know, simplicity of like signing a piece of paper, or this took like many people to come together to make this work?
Yeah, you know what it is, you know, put it this way, you brought up education, right? The budget for education in New York City, just the education, is larger, I believe, than the entire city of Dallas's budget. Right, just to give kind of like a contrast of how much money is required to run the city. So the city had like unlimited, you know, had all this funds, but it was all super inefficient. And so what these guys did is they just came in and said, look, we're going to realign incentives so that all that money is more efficient. So instead of $10 going to the classroom and only $1 getting to the kid, it would be $10 going to the classroom and $7 get to the kid, you know, which is what should happen, right? I mean, that's what's the money for. And so, you know, all these people kind of came together with all these ideas, which, by the way, were from both sides of the aisle. It wasn't just Democrats or Republicans. It was both. They both worked together, and not just at the city level, also the federal level. So Bill Clinton had a lot to do with this. He kind of like passed a lot of legislation at the federal level that aligned with what Giuliani was doing at the local level. And so you had this baby boomer Democrat president and this Republican crime fighter, and they were like working together to like fix the city, you know, and you know, again, Clinton wasn't particularly targeting New York, but New York benefited greatly. And so, you know, the nice thing about the movie is it's both sides of the aisle. It's probably one of the only times where we've had such synchronicity between both parties. So I think everyone now should take example of like, or look at it as an example of how everyone can kind of like get on the same page and go in the same direction, because everybody's clearly mad about everything right now, you know.
I mean,
So,
No,
so yeah,
both
it's
sides.
a unique time. It's a unique time where everybody who needed to do it was in the right place at the right time. They all had new ideas, and they all got to do all of them.
now you mentioned earlier that the police force in New York is really scarce. That actually I was today years old when I learned. Like, that actually surprised me, like, because the way the movie's portrayed is there's like two cops
Yeah.
walking down every street,
Every
you know?
corner, you know.
There's
Well, you
always
know-
two of them walking together. They're on every street.
Like, you ever watch Blue Bloods? You know, they're-
NYPD, all these
Oh.
shows, they're everywhere. But no, you know, like you said, it reminds me of we're all a bunch of movie guys at the table.
I was about to say something
It
about
reminds
that.
me of Last Action Hero.
Mhm.
When the guy from the movie comes into the real world and shoots somebody and announces it, then he hears a guy say, "Good for you, buddy." He's like, "I just shot somebody." And the guy in the New York apartment's like, "Yeah, good for you, buddy."
See, like, one
I
of my
mean, look,
pleasures has always been procedural crime dramas, bro. Like, I can watch all of them. Except for CSI sucks. Fuck CSI.
Oh my
But,
God.
the rest of it, they all take place. Well, we're not gonna get into that. It's so corny. But and not in the good way. But they all take place in New York. You know, I fucking love Blue Bloods, man. Because it's like, from what I know from cops, Blue Bloods is 100% fiction. Like, the cops care. You know, they're like they're there when you need them to. Like, all this stuff sounds like surreal and unheard of to me. That's not how they are around here. You know. So like, I like the fake cop fiction. I don't know how accurate any of that is really. I've never been in New York. Yeah.
Well,
you know-
like he was saying, like, with this new time period that New York's in, where it was getting better, it was kind of like that, where the cops showed up on time and stuff. But no, I was talking in particular about what he was mentioning earlier, where he was literally saying, like, nobody's gonna show up and help you. Like, yeah, it reminded me of that scene from The Last Action Hero. Like, yeah, nobody was gonna show up.
Well,
You
when
know?
you said that, like,
Police are they underfunded in New York?
I mean, they are funded. Look, it's a huge police force. It's like 30,
Because,
40,000 police. It's like an
the
army.
police bullshit.
But in
kinda-
comparison to the city, it's not enough.
Well, and you know, one of the things they did that was really smart is they realized that, look, there's only a couple people doing a lot of the crime. And in the 90s, the Giuliani administration, with Bill Bratton and a couple other like innovative folks, came up with this idea called CompStat. And this sounds obvious now, but it was not obvious then. What they started doing was just tracking crime. They're like, oh, person got mugged here, and they put a pin on the board. And this place got robbed. They put a pin on the board. And this happened here, and the pin on the board. They would track it. They would track it and track it. Basically analytics. And what they started realizing is that a lot of these crimes were happening in the same areas, and a lot of the crimes were being done by the same people. So as opposed to just rounding everybody up, they would say, well, let's go find those people that are doing all the crime. And so what they did is they took the police used to be in the cars, and they'd show up after you were mugged or murdered, and so what they said was, how about we prevent crime before it happens? And so they just started tracking crime, and the police were able to work more efficiently, and hence the crime started dropping. Like, for example, on the subways, they had all the police. I think it was 75 police were inside the subway cars. And CompStat was like, actually, all the crime happens on the platform. So they just moved the police to the platforms, and suddenly the crime went away. And when the criminals moved, they moved the police. And so I think, with New York, the systems they came up with were really efficient, which made the police really efficient, and also put them on the ground so you see them. So, like, when you visit New York City, the NYPD is just as much of a tourist attraction as any other part of, you see them everywhere. They're out there, they'll live in Staten Island and Brooklyn, but they're regular people, so they're citizens of New York. And so, and then Ray Kelly came in and made, there's like 120 countries, 150 countries worth of people in New York City. And he made the whole police force a majority minority police force. So, you have different people from different countries policing different neighborhoods. And so it's, the NYPD is a fixture of New York City. It's just in 2020, the police came under attack. you know, and they're reluctant to like particularly get into a situation that gets everybody in trouble, you know. And so
there's a Blue Bloods episode about that. I've seen that shit.
yeah, it's not what you want. You want look. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, if someone comes up to you with a gun, the police will like they'll fight back for on behalf of you. They don't know who you are, but that's their job, you know. And so that's not a bad thing, and it reduces crime overall, you know. And so I think that like what they did is by lowering crime, you lower, you know, you make bad neighborhoods better, and it's good for all the people of New York City. It's good for everybody. And if you live in a bad neighborhood, if you're in Harlem or somewhere like that, your neighborhood got better and your value of your house went up, and then, you know, everybody benefited from this. So the more you bring crime down, the less you need police, because the neighborhood, if it's healthy, will police itself, you know. And that's really where New York got. It got to the point where like you didn't need the police in certain areas because there were people out. If there are people out, then no one's going to do crime, and people are out because there's no crime happening. And so you really want the neighborhood to basically take care of itself. And the police are kind of the last thing. Once the police come in, the neighborhood's already gone, you know. And so if the neighborhood's healthy and people have jobs and they're eating food and they're walking around and doing stuff
like that, they don't want the police there, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the city can self-sustain itself as long as it's healthy and everybody's active and not like, you know,
I just want to say
freaking out.
Like, I have totally heard of Comstat, and that's like it's because of once again Blue Bloods.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there.
Blue Bloods better sponsor this episode, damn it.
I plugged them too many times.
You know, New York got a lot of urban legends based around it, and so one of my favorite ones that I've always wondered, and when you were filming, y'all probably went all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Alligators in the sewers.
They exist.
Maybe. There's a lot of things in the sewers that exist.
All right, yeah. I was just wondering.
I'll tell you that much.
You been down there?
You didn't film in the sewers?
God, no way. The Ghostbusters went down there. I saw what's down there it's a river of negative slime.
Yep.
Let's see. This whole documentary, you talked to all these New Yorkers. You never went down there and talked to the sewer people.
No, you know what? They have their own representatives. Someone down there will make their movie for them.
They're like, I don't think New York's going very well. That's why I'm in the sewer.
Yeah. You have a bunch of people in this documentary. Who were you most surprised by that you got?
You know, I think one of the most interesting people in the movie was actually Rudy Giuliani himself. You know, he's a controversial figure, especially now. But, you know, he had a real vision for what he wanted to do. And it's funny because in the movie we talk about he ran in 1989, but he didn't know anything. And this is his own admission. He's like, I ran as a crime fighter, but I had no idea how the city worked. He knew nothing. And he ran like he lost, you know? And so he after he lost, he's like, hold on here. He took 18 months to really educate himself of how the city actually works. And when he came back 4 years later, he won. And, you know, he had a real vision for how to do it. And for the most part, you know, most of the things he wanted to do actually worked. You know, his second term was a little rocky, you know, because the problem is he actually fixed a lot of stuff, and him and his team fixed a lot of stuff. And then, you know, then you get down into the smaller stuff, and that's a bit more complicated to fix. But the big stuff, they went after the big stuff. They fixed a lot of stuff. And then Bloomberg inherited a pretty good city and then fixed more stuff over his 12 years in office.
Yeah. That's an impressive record, though. What is that, 24 years of things just constantly going up?
Yeah,
that's a good track record.
It was great. I mean, it's the last, I mean, you know, even into the de Blasio era, you know, things were pretty good. Up until we hit COVID, you know, the city was awesome. It was an awesome place to live. It's always going to have its weird quirks. The train's always going to be late. People are always going to be complaining about the prices of everything. The apartments are always going to have like doors that don't close and toilets in the middle of your kitchen. You know, weird stuff. There's a lot of weird stuff in the city, you know. But hey, it's you know,
charm, you know,
it's the charm. I mean, look, my mother-in-law was in the city, and she looked around and saw all these people from all these different places just getting along, and that's it. That's like the beauty of New York. You have people from all over the world squeezed into a tiny. It's only look. The island of Manhattan's only 34 square miles. It's not big, you know. And they're all just like getting along and doing their thing. And so I think that's like New York represents a really interesting mixing bowl of like good stuff, you know. And I think we want to maintain that.
My friend Brendan, he's an optimist, and he would say that places like New York that are cultural hubs are the only saving grace that we have as a society. It's where you learn that how people truly are. Like you just said right out of his mouth, when a bunch of people from many different places all come together and get along.
Yeah, it's incredible, you know. And the nice thing is like everyone's hustling, right? Everybody's hustling. People come to New York City to make their bones, and you know, some people make it, some people don't, but like everybody gets a chance to do it, and everybody's got to go through the same thing, you know. Everybody's got to suffer, you know.
I'm a huge guy from New York.
I'm a huge fan of cooking shows, and when he said everybody gets their chance, Harlem Burgers.
I haven't had a Harlem Burger. Is it good?
Harlem Burger, it's a cart. It's a guy with a cart, but he's been there for like 20 years, and he sells burgers for like $3 a burger and $1 a hot dog.
That's damn good prices. That's like 10.
That's worth the train ride, honestly.
And I was watching Anthony Bourdain. I was watching him go through New York, and he said New York's one of the only places in the whole world where you can find, you know, like $5 roadside Chinese takeout. You can go down the road a bit. You can eat some. You can eat some falafel. You can eat. You know. I mean,
that's crazy shit. Cause like really, for a good hamburger down here is $10. For Chinese takeout, that's 12 to 15. You know.
But like you said, everybody's hustling. So it's one of that, because of that mindset, it's one of the only places in the world where, you know, you can walk down some random street and see an entire setup of people selling Nikes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shoe convention. Let's get over here. Let's buy some shoes.
It's great. I mean, we got 25,000 restaurants there, you know, and like I said, if you go out of the outer boroughs and Queens and places like that, you'll get food from around the world that's just like if you were there. I mean, it's fantastic. And again, like COVID hit it pretty hard. A lot of restaurants closed. A lot of businesses closed. So it's important that the city like really takes care of those restaurant owners, you know, by making sure that they're not getting mugged and their patrons are not getting mugged. Otherwise, people don't go out. If they don't go out, the restaurant closes, and then, you know, no more falafel. And that would be a disaster.
Yep.
No more chimichangas.
Oh man, Gotham, the fall and rise of New York. Why is it called Gotham? Where did it get the name Gotham from?
That comes from like the 20s, doesn't it?
Yeah, Gotham is a term that's been around. It's been a term for New York City for a really long time, and I think it was actually started as a kind of a derogatory term. But you know,
the Goths lived.
Yeah,
they were a raven. They all did a bunch of raves over there.
The Deco Gothic.
That's why they invented trip pants. You remember trip pants?
Yeah, it's a term for New York City that it actually goes way back. It goes way, way, way back. You know, and again, yeah, like Batman got his inspiration from Gotham, as was stated earlier. And that's, you know, all the old architecture downtown, the Art Deco and things all comes out of New York City, you know, and it looks like that sometimes, you know.
One of my favorite movie theories is you remember the movie Seven with Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman.
Great movie.
The dude, the creator, the director of the movie, he goes out of his way to never mention what city it is. As a matter of fact, if you zoom in on any of the badges, it's all like obscured, and you can't even. There's nothing that says what city it's in. But there's a film theory that it takes place in Gotham before like Batman, Bruce Wayne became Batman.
Interesting.
And
I haven't heard that theory.
Dude, it's like it's undisputable. It makes so much sense. It's New York, you know?
Oh, yeah. And it's raining the whole time. It's the worst time to be in New York City is when it rains. You don't want to be there when it rains.
And I mean, there are so many songs about it. You know, it's a place that literally inspires imagination when you think of how big a city could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's that the nice thing is, you know, when you're in New York City, you can't see the edges. It's not big, but you can't see the edges of the city. So there's always potential for something on the next block. There's always something out there that you haven't seen. And then, again, that's why it tickles people's imaginations. That's why they come there. That's why they're like inspired, because like you can't see it all. It's just not in your whole lifetime. You'll never see everything there, so.
Oh yeah.
And that's why people love it, and that's why, again, if you're going to go explore, you need to make sure that you're safe. That's just an important thing,
Now,
See, we're from right here in Texas, and Houston, literally a 1.5 hour drive from us from where we're at. Houston, it's not like New York. It's not like this beautiful cultural. It's Cowtown, and you could get stabbed there.
Yeah. It's also huge.
Yes, you can't see the edges because the edge is like 40 miles that way and 40 miles that way.
Yeah, that is a giant city. It is a giant city. Though I hear they got a pretty good food scene there. I hear it's a pretty hardcore, decent.
Our whole state has a pretty good food scene if you like barbecue.
To be honest,
I love barbecue. I'm a Lockhart guy, so I'm a Smitty's guy. What can I say?
I'm a booty man. I'm an everything guy. You know what? I love breakfast.
now we got a thing right here that's saying it's about to close out on us. But so, is there anything that you would like to say about Gotham? The God damn it, the Gotham,
The fall and rise.
I gotcha.
I know.
You said rise and fall so bad.
I know it's so. I did it perfect like 2 times ago. So.
Good on you.
2 out of 3.
I would say that the most important thing is to go see the movie and, make sure that you pay attention to the lessons so that your city doesn't end up, sliding like New York City's sliding right now. And if you want it turned around, it's possible, because if you can do it in New York, you can literally do it anywhere.
Well, Matthew Taylor, that's just your opinion.
Hey, and that's fine, because that's all we've got here are
Opinions and beer.
We are a millions and billions to subscribe for more opinions and beer.
Oh yeah, hey, you're drinking on the same thing.
Oh,
Yeah, he showed us earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I give this.
I remember that.
By the way, I'm giving this like a 10.
It's pretty good.
I'm giving
That's
this a-
good. I like it.
You know me, I'm a sour guy. I hate stouts and pilsners and stuff. I like goses. I like salty beers. This is a 10.
I'll
for
give it a
me.
9 because it is very salty. I was gonna say that it's like
Yeah, it's a
salt.
ghost.
You mind if I here you first, because like
Huh? That's the whole point of a ghost.
is what they're salty.
Yeah, they're
I never
German
fruity.
sours, right?
Yeah.
German salty sours.
So sour, it's not salty.
Yeah, ghosts.
Ghosts are meant to be salty though.
Yeah.
Difference between a ghost and a what's the other fruity one?
A sour.
Yeah. But anyways, I hope you had fun chatting with us.
Hey,
I had a great time.
One day
Oh, yeah, man.
I'll
Cool,
pay
cool.
for this Zoom Plus and get the extra minutes.
One day I'm
We
gonna.
have longer interviews. 'Cause we're
I've been
studying.
to Chicago, London, California, and Houston many times. I got to make my way to New York one day in life.
got to. It's like nothing else you've ever seen. You're gonna have a blast, and you'll be welcome. New Yorkers they're not as rude as people say they are. They're actually pretty nice.
That is good to know, because like that contributing reason to let's face it, I'm just broke.
Oh my
But
god.
like I've always thought about that. Like, why they're just gonna be all douchebags when we get there?
What if traffic gives you an anxiety?
Oh well, then
love of God, don't go.
Take the subway. Take the subway. Subway. Look, here's the thing: you could be on the subway and run into Keanu Reeves, because the best thing around the city is the subway. Because if you take a car, you're going to sit in traffic. And Austin has terrible traffic. I'd rather be in New York when it comes to driving.
I'd rather walk, man. In any city, you walk, you'll see more
You walk.
stuff.
You walk, yeah. Walking's the best. My
Oh,
wife
yeah,
and
say
I
that
walked
about
every
video
street in
games.
Manhattan. So yeah, it's the best walking city in the world. There's always something to look at, and there's always something to do. At all
video
times of
games.
day and night.
And it's as far as cities with modern art goes, New York isn't one of the worst. I've seen some pretty bad modern art in my life.
Oh yeah, it's the pinnacle of the art scene. So there's a lot. There's like thousands of museums. There's thousands. So yeah, you'll have plenty to do forever.
Oh,
Oh man,
Oh yeah.
great show.
Might see cats.
lots of cats.
Cats on
Everywhere.
Broadway.
Oh,
The
oh, you're
Broadway.
talking about literal cats.
My God.
Literal cats too, actually.
Get a ticket to Book of Mormon.
Yeah, actually book a
book a year in
Mormon.
advance though, because you got to book a year in advance, or you won't get a ticket.
Oh my goodness.
Jesus Christ.
Good
No
time.
Mormon Christ.
Mormon Christ.
But anyways, thanks again for